Welcome to the Pipeline Online Podcast. In this episode, we have Estevan Mayor Tony Sernick. This year saw Estevan receive a remarkable reprieve from the Saskatchewan government when it decided to keep its coal-fired power fleet going for years to come. Estevan is also the chosen site for Saskatchewan's first nuclear reactors when they get built. And the city is also working on a coal-to-graphite project as well. It's a lot of exciting stuff.
You're on mute, Brian.
Real smart guy running this thing here. It's Brian Zinchuk of Pipeline Online, and we got Bronwyn Air, and we're going to have Tony Sernick, who is the mayor of Estevan, join us here. And I shared the promo here last week and had a lot of people sharing it, and liking it and whatnot. So hopefully we'll get a few people listening. Tony, tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. It's my favorite podcast, so to be on it is quite the honor. So thank you for the invitation. I've been, I was born and raised in the area. I grew up in Estevan. I've been in the oil field right out of high school for the past 30 years. Currently in business development with a company called Mantle Artificial Lift, which is the PC pump industry, which I've been part of for the past 20 years. And, became a city councilor in 2020, did that for 4 years, and then somehow, some way became the mayor in 2024 and have a year under the belt in that, and so far, so good.
So one of the things about running for mayor in 2020, before the big news, in 24, before the big news of this year, is that it was kind of like signing up to be the captain of a Titanic, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a major reason why I made the shift. I knew basically the things weren't looking so well for our city, and being born and raised, I just wanted to be in the room for any big decisions that came up, and to do anything I could do to reverse decision or help with whatever comes of the future, right? So it was a big reason why I got into this for sure.
So, Tony, tell us about the impact of the coal decision on the community. I mean, before, as Brian alluded to, things were not looking good. I know, everything from housing prices to, people leaving, obviously the community planning to leave. What's changed? What was the impact of the decision to stick with coal by the government?
It's a full 180 in what the direction the city was going. 2020, the talks, we were going to be a ghost town, lose a third of our population. That goes with tax revenue, all the bad things that can happen there. And it's just been a 180. And it actually all started with a couple of years back, the announcement of Estevan being the first site of the SMRs. At that time, there was probably 400 houses for sale, and you couldn't sell your house if you wanted to. So basically, most people look at them as an asset, and they were a liability just 2 years ago. And here we are in 2025, SMR's first site, coal rebuild. There basically is a handful of houses for sale. Rental vacancy is basically zero. Everybody's attitude. The city was in restriction, and now it's kind of full systems go to start. We need to start building now, right?
So, my neighbor had a house for sale for 2 years, hardly any lookers at all. And it sold just about a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago. But prior to that, just nothing moved at all. And there was up and down the street, there were signs for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a week ago, there was a big, beautiful house came for sale for $700,000, which is a lot of money in my eyes, but it sold in 10 minutes. So
wow.
That's the impact of, like I said, going from a ghost town to now we're the energy city again, once again, full of energy with so much on the horizon.
So what's the actual numbers here we're talking for coal workers and stuff? Actually, I think I have it here. Hold on.
You're going to answer your own question.
Yeah, we're going to answer my own question. So these are the numbers.
Even better.
These are the numbers that are talking about here. 800 people. This is from Sask Power, directly tied to the Estevan mine and to Shandon boundary power stations. And most of those jobs are 100,000 plus. I mean, the impact is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, it gives people optimism. And again, vacancy rates are zero, but we do have abundance of hotels from the last boom. Kind of the good part about the last boom, there was a lot built. So we're sitting in the best spot we probably ever have prior to more economic activity coming to town. So again, just those numbers are great music to my ears. We'll get that coal rebuilt, and then when the SMRs actually start as well, you're adding another 1,000 people there. So, hopefully most of these people can find Estevan as their home, and away we go.
So, one of the things that we're going to get into is that Estevan was working on a lot of different fronts to try to salvage the community, because it did look like the Titanic was sinking in. And, you worked on that. Previous mayor, Roy Ludwig, worked a lot on it. Some things did not come to fruition. Bronwyn, I think you wanted to ask a little bit about the coal transition stuff here. Maybe let's start with that, and then we'll get into the projects.
Well, just from my time in government, I remember quite a lot of talk about the federal government putting money where their mouth was in terms of transition. And I forget the formal name of the fund or whatever it was. I'm sure there were a few of them, but it was, in order to enable you to go green, we'll help you. And my recollection from, on the provincial side was that for all the feds talk about helping in some of these transition projects and so on, it was very difficult actually and challenging for communities in the Southeast to get them to actually get behind anything much. And I certainly the provincial government tried to step in on occasion to ease some of that. But what's your recollection, Tony, about the effectiveness of any or all of those programs, some of the dollar figures behind them, and whether any of them are actually still around?
Yeah, a couple of them are still around. Any money that you can get back from your government's a good thing for starters. In this situation, it wasn't a very nice situation why we're receiving money. Basically, they were going to shut down $1 billion industry and give us a couple million. But the city, at the same time, what everything did come to fruition is we can't have our heads in the sand anymore. So the money was used for trying to find the next industry or the next best thing. So yeah, there were many things on the go. And as you said, mentioned Mayor Roy Ludwig, he was part of it all. So it is good to mention him. Obviously, he's retired as the mayor now, but kind of his legacy still lives on and the projects that we have. So there were many that kind of sunk and swam. There's a few that are still going on. Biomass plant is still in the works. A greenhouse using geothermal is kind of still in the works. But what kind of came about it was a projects to keep our coal plants open, which is a coal-to-graphite project. And again, that's where Mayor Roy Ludwig came in. And when you say conferences are a waste of money, long story short, it was somebody he met at a conference, introduced him to, I call him the mad scientist of George Washington University. His name is actually Dr. Michael Wagner. But I do call him the mad scientist. And he was working on a project to create graphite from biomass, if you will, trees and what have you. And our coal, it's the same in North Dakota, but where it came in, he found the coal to be the best of making battery grade graphite. So that's where the introduction, and that's why, the George Washington University is in Estevan. Obviously, it's the same coal in North Dakota, but North Dakota was not shutting their plants in or their mines in. Estevan was, so that's where his attention. And the one thing about our coal, it's called coal, but technically it's still almost a peat moss. So when the SaskPower says it's terrible to burn, or when the workers say it's terrible to burn, it is terrible to burn because it's still in that, it's not really in the coal stage. And the technical term we use now is lignitic biomass. So again, yeah, it's very interesting in that sense. And again, so that program, that's been a couple of years, there's been legalities. that everybody's hopped through, and actually, but the actual process of turning our coal into battery grade graphite has been proven. And the next year here, it's either going to sink or swim or what have you, right? So now we need to find someone, because it's never been done before, someone to produce manufactured graphite. And hopefully we can provide the world with a new source of graphite, which usually comes from China.
So one thing we should explain here is that everyone's heard about lithium ion batteries, and lithium, I believe, is the cathode of a battery, but graphite is the other end. It's the anode. So one's positive, one's negative, and I'm damned if I can remember which is which. But you need both to make the batteries that are in everything from my cell phone to the camera that's in front of me here to electric vehicles. And even if EVs aren't adopted at the scale that some people thought they'd be, they still, I mean, when I'm doing a photo shoot, I've got 7 lithium ion batteries on my body at one time.
Exactly.
All my different gear. And that's just, a minor thing. So what this could be combined with the new lithium industry that is also growing up around Estevan, 20 miles west, or 25 miles west and 30 miles north. We could have both ends of the battery cycle here being produced right at Estevan.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like talking about the coal bribery money, as I nickname it. Maybe it's not the best way to put it, but I forgot to mention it spurred the birth of the Southeast Tech Hub as well. So Mr. Gordon Moore has kind of been the executive director in that. And again, that's where the coal-to-graphite project, coal-to-hydrogen, but the critical minerals, right? That you can't turn on the news these days and not hear about critical minerals. So, and that's just one thing that's it's just a different look on things. Obviously, Estevan's a blue collar town, and Gord brings the geek aspect to it, if you will. But it's bringing a different set of eyes to our city, letting people know we have what the world wants right here in Estevan, Saskatchewan, right? So and again, whatever the projects are, we're on board with going with anything. And that's one thing that the money did spur, is, like I said, it changed everybody's attitude into, we're not just power generation, we want to be everything, right? So
what have been some of the issues? You mentioned legalities and not asking in great detail, but what have been some of the hurdles that have been faced with this? It seems to me, if it's been proven to work, it should just work. What's the main delay?
I was kind of protecting the university, right? It's their project, protecting them, but also just protecting our area where basically they have to use our coal. The university has to use our coal, and they can't just prove everything, take a bunch of money from us, and then run away to whatever. So it protects it. It protects it. The legalities of it, the long story short, is it protects the project to stay within 30 kilometers of Estevan, Saskatchewan. So again, so it's just another way to kind of protect our jobs, right? So
interesting.
Yep.
So maybe we should. So one of the things that the province has been doing is that the big coal decision, which was announced in June. I mean, I wrote a pile of stories, did one of you there, and we took a picture of you and Ken Hosty. You went to school with Ken. Ken's one of the union guys for IBEW.
Yeah.
And the impact of that coal decision is gobsmacking. I mean, the reality is it is the biggest energy decision, and I've had this conversation with government ministers.
Yeah.
Biggest energy decision this province has made in 10 years. And the clean electricity regulations, which are very much still on the books, and the federal coal regulations, which are very much still on the books, say we're supposed to shut off those coal plants, other than the one unit, in 4 years and how many days? And 21 days.
Yeah.
So 23 days. We're supposed to shut down and on a cold night, coal is up to 44% of our power generation. The fact that the government said to hell with that, to hell with the feds, is enormous. And, the wave of relief this town saw is, unbelievable.
I'm sure everybody slept the best sleeps they've had in many years after they heard that. I know I did, right? So, again, I call it a generational decision, which, governments are you don't really hear too many of them. Everything seems to be ran in a 4-year cycle, and trying to get voted back in is usually the goal. So sorry to say that, Bronwyn. That's the way it kind of looks. But again, it's a generational decision that affects, Estevan, but Saskatchewan, for the next 20, 30 years, right? So it's big, right? Like, as you said, it's so important. It was one of those things that people just thought we could shut off and not replace it with anything. And that was always I was never, we must burn coal forever. But, just the terrible decision to shut something off without having full replacement of it, it just wasn't the way we should have been going. So, when Minister Harrison brought that news to Estevan, I mean, it was something obviously that I always fought for, but I never thought I'd hear. So been great sleep ever since.
So we're going to go to a break here, folks, and then we're going to get into what that replacement is. And Bronwyn, I think you're going to lead off here on the nuclear stuff, okay? So we're just going to start this ad right now. There's a reason that HG Jack has dominated Saskatchewan's oil patch. That's because that distinctive curved walking beam reduces energy consumption by about 25%. That means 25% less power bills, 25% less carbon tax. That's a big difference. And it's available exclusively from Grimes Sales and Service, Latman, Saskatchewan.
Well, I was just going to say too, on the clean electricity regulations, right? I mean, that's one thing that the province submitted to the Saskatchewan First Tribunal to get an idea of the cost impact of what those regulations would entail. And as we all know here, I mean, that was basically no fossil fuel generated power by 2035. And the province was in that terrible quandary where if coal was no longer in the mix, and natural gas was bad, what do? I mean, we didn't have enough hydro. We don't have enough. Manitoba doesn't have enough hydro to give us, and wind and sun won't do it. So that was the quandary. But we did announce, was it 2023, I guess, maybe early 2024, that we wouldn't be following the clean electricity regulations in terms of, Saskatchewan's position on it, and, which was the right decision to make. And then obviously the decision on coal does that writ large, right? I think that it's interesting that in the recent MOU between Alberta and Ottawa, the Energy Memorandum of Understanding, it does appear that clean electricity regulations have been shelved, as they put it. I'm not sure formally in the MOU, but that's the narrative around the MOU with it. It's been shelved. I mean, again, it would be more comforting if some of these things were actually struck, whether it's Bill C-69 or clean electricity regulations. Shelved is fine. Tanker ban, again, sort of shelved, but they're not really formalized, which is another day.
That's just for Alberta. Tony, let's get into the SMR thing. So they announced back in 22 that we've chosen a design. We're looking at building nuclear reactors. And first it said either Elbow or Estevan region. It was narrowed down in 24. It will be in Estevan, either at Rafferty or at Boundary. What does this decision mean? And, we could be possibly going to large reactors instead.
Yeah, again, like I said, just that announcement from that a couple of years ago, although there's been nothing built, but just the announcement turned housing sales and everything, turned the attitude around, right? So, and again, that's where we knew it was a competition between us and Elbow. So, as a council, AcDev board, Southeast Tech Hub, Southeast College, everybody came together, and it was as simple as, these are coming, we want them, do whatever we can, to show the rest of them is the spot. So that's one initiative we did, and then there we are. We got the decision, so that was a victory all in itself. And we'll see where they get built. That I'm sure that'll be another controversy coming up. So one thing you learn as a mayor or even a council, you can't even put up a basketball net without somebody raising a stink. So we better get ready for that. But again, everything's been pretty positive. Everybody I talked to on that side of front, again, I think just people started to realize that, major projects are going to be built. We're the energy city and we want it, right? So
is there NIMBYism on the SMR thing in Estevan? I mean, is there a kind of a faction of people who don't want it, who don't want it in their backyards? What's the sense of that?
yeah, I've had a handful of conversations where people don't want it in their backyard, but I think that will really ramp up once they choose the site. Boundary is kind of the older, where the Boundary Dam power station's been a part of it. So that's, if I had my choice, I would put it on Boundary just because it's already been industrialized, if you will. But both sites make sense. And again, whatever projects come into the area, I'm all for it. Whether it's Rafferty, Boundary, let's go, let's build it.
Yeah, I've been taking people on tours and whatnot, and showing them both sites. I've been, anyone I can drag in my SUV to my wife's SUV to show them the two sites and explain, how much water is available at each. The one problem is that if we do put it at Boundary, every megawatt of coal we add, of nuclear we add, we have to subtract a megawatt of coal because it's only so much capacity that volume of water has. But if we put it at Rafferty, we could maintain our coal fleet. And I've been strongly suggesting, now is a good time to look at, and I'm going to pull the image up here, of not just keeping coal going for a bit, but adding carbon capture like the Unit 3 here to the rest of the coal fleet and using that for enhanced oil recovery to extend the life of oil and gas, which is under, having a tough time right now.
Yeah, people don't realize how important that carbon capture is. Obviously, it's been going for over 20 years. Even myself, before I got into the political side of it, I didn't, or 10 years, sorry, but I didn't realize how important it was to oil extraction. It basically adds 20,000 barrels to the old Weyburn field, which without carbon cap or without CO2 flooding, it could be shut in right now. Who knows, right? So, and again, the importance of, I always get yelled at when I say it's emissions-free oil, 20,000 barrels. And everybody says there's no such thing as emissions-free oil. Well, that's an argument for another day. But for an oil company to go from 0 barrels to 20,000 barrels, the amount of emissions and all that goes into that is phenomenal. Would be so right now it's basically being produced by lowering emissions at a power plant going into the ground. But just the important thing, like I said, you get into water flooding where oil and water pushes each other to where they want to be, where the CO2 goes into the ground. Actually, it's an attractant. It attracts the oil to it. And again, they can basically oil production up and down with the will of, adding CO2 or taking it away, right? So it's, again, the importance of it is huge. Southeast Oil Patch has a big demand for it right now. We could go Steelman unit, even the Weyburn unit, only half flooded right now. So those are low-lying fruit that the province could take advantage of for sure.
Have you had any conversations? I mean, for the first, half dozen years after CCS went online, there was a big push to do more, and then it just kind of went. And SaskPower didn't seem to be that interested. But now that coal is going to be rejuvenated, have you had any discussions with anyone saying, maybe we should, put it on Unit 6 at Boundary, put it on Shand, maybe Poplar River?
Yeah, when I do sales in the oil field, that conversation comes up with a few various companies right there, right? So again, there's a demand for it. They know how important it is to the old oil fields that we have. And so hopefully it happens one of these days. Obviously, it brings a lot to the economy as well. But the carbon capture, like, obviously I'm from Estevan, and you hear in the news, it hasn't been successful and everybody's a little down and out. And I think it was 2022, 2021, I went to the first ever carbon capture conference in Edmonton representing the city. And I'm sitting there and everything is about Estevan and Saskatchewan and how successful this is. And like, there's 1,000 people in this room and I'm just sitting there going, why doesn't Saskatchewan feel this way about this project, right? You could find reasons for that as well. But again, there was so many good, again, the whole conference was about Estevan, CCS, BD3, the success of it. There was mentioned many times, there's trillions and trillions of dollars just in that room alone that would love to put into carbon capture, right? So, and even, there was 1,000 people in that room, and once they found out I was from Estevan, it was like I was like a sideshow or something, right? Everybody was coming over to talk. They wanted to know what was going on, and like I said, I told that story a million times. I'm like, you go ask anybody in Saskatchewan, they think it's an unsuccessful. And to date, it is the only technology that has actually lowered emissions anywhere in the world. So, pretty important.
You talked about boom and bust, right? And the impact that both have had on your city over the years. I mean, the oil patch not doing great at the moment. What happens on the ground? I mean, short of the obvious, you talked about housing starts and housing sales and the rest, but when things are up, what happens? And when things are down, as we're seeing right now in the oil patch, how does that kind of manifest on the ground in Estevan?
It's like the oil patch is obviously prevalent. Lots of people work in it, but it hasn't been in the forefront since 2015. Like it's been a struggle. I've been living through it. The struggle is real in the oil field. Just when you think things are going to turn around, price oil comes up, something happens that's totally out of your control, and it's just that boom and bust area where, like the city, it's obviously still a hub for Southeast Saskatchewan as far as, your supply stores and all that sort of stuff. But what we've probably seen is more of a move from cities, like the big oil companies having their headquarters, offices, what have you, or they've kind of moved down to the rural areas where the workers are, right? So it's something that, like I said, it's much. You realize how slower it is in the oil field just by going to the restaurants and everything like that. Like nothing is definitely full, but again, as the oil field picks up, you can just feel it everywhere you go, right? So
that's one of the things I've been increasingly concerned about, and I've talked about a lot of the podcast and a lot of my conversations. The price of oil has been floating around $58. I'm not sure what it is today, but that absolutely drives most things, and that is not a good price. In over the last several years, $65 seems to be the cutoff. When WTI is below that, activity drops like a stone, and we're seeing that right now. But the other thing is that we have this big technological change, which is the advent of these large open hole multilaterals.
Yep.
And people who watch this podcast have heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but it has a really big impact. I talked to two companies based in Estevan in the last 2 weeks who told me that their revenue was down 30 to 50%. And it's
really big numbers.
That is huge. I mean, you go tell that to any other business, McDonald's or grocery store or whatever. And, one of them actually pulled up his QuickBooks and texted me a screenshot, showed me down 30.8%. Like that hurts. And, oil prices, if they ever come up again, and I don't know when that's going to be, we'll solve a lot of issues, but they're not going to solve the technological issues. And, we used to have 65 drilling rigs working in Southeast Saskatchewan. I think last count I had was 13, 14, and a bunch of those were based in Estevan. Now, that's diminished greatly. So, I mean, how do you, when you're dealing with, or, as a counselor and prior to the coal decision, you were dealing with not only, coal looking to go away, but also the fact that our other primary industry, oil, has had 11 years now of having a crap kicked out of it. How do you deal with that?
You just you can't really just like go on the past. You just have to change your future, become more efficient, and that's one thing in the oil field. Like obviously, the drilling side becoming more efficient is hurting the service side of things, but the oil companies are liking it, right? And it really, at the end of the day, it all goes with the price of oil. When we're around 70, even in our business, like we provide pumps. So obviously, as it goes down to the 60, we've had projects decline, went away, and even just that $70 a barrel, things were so much more active. So it really depends on the price of oil. Even with the multilaterals, again, if we get into that $70, $80 range, the drilling rigs will come back. But as you said, oil company that they used to drill 10 wells to get the same amount of oil. Now they drill 2 wells to get the same amount of oil as 10 wells, right? So it is an efficiency thing that'll help companies. As long as the oil companies are making money, it will eventually trickle down. But again, it's not going to unless even Mr. Greenslade there a few episodes ago talking about Southwest. The oil's there, and it just needs more. It needs a better price for the oil companies to come back and get it, right? So in Southeast is in that same situation.
So Brian Crossman here just posted a little bit of correction here. He said, we are adaptable, but there's only so much service providers, he meant to say providers, can do.
Yep.
And, that's the thing is that companies have adapted, but I mean, I see service rig companies as example who are operating half of their fleets. That's become the norm, or less than that, right? There's a lot of companies in Southeast Saskatchewan have 10 rigs or so. They might have 4 or 5 going, and that's just some of that slow decline we've seen over the years. And I know it sounds like moaning and whining, but this is the reality of what people are dealing with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Like, I can just comment for, our business. We've wanted to expand, we've wanted to hire, but there was always that in the back of your mind. What if? And like I said, it's been that way for 10 years. So even where our company's at, probably, like I said, a year or 2 ago, we should probably doubled our employees, but we just never, right? So we, everybody worked a little harder to get through it. And again, that's just, you can't do that forever, as Mr. Crossman just stated, right? It's you can only improve efficiency. You can only do so much. Sooner or later, you have to make terrible, tough decisions, to either get rid of equipment or what have you, or even shut the doors, right? So, it's just like I said, the struggle's real in the oil field, and you know what I mean? Please let there be one more boom, as the bumper sticker says.
Yeah. What is the state of the service sector down there? I mean, I know with the abandonment program through COVID, that was an attempt. I mean, it was really an attempt by us, provincial government at that time, to, again, take that funding from the feds and try to channel it as an economic, make work program, really, in effect. I mean, it had a good outcome in many cases in terms of dealing with abandoned or shut-in wells. But, that was really the intention, is to try to kind of buoy the service sector a little bit and help them out at a really, really challenging time at that time. Yeah. Where are things at now, not only in terms of abandonment, and we've touched a little bit on that here with the multilaterals and so on, but just that trickle down to the service companies. What are they looking like in the Southeast and in Estevan?
It's slower, and again, everything just relies on that price of oil. The government even came out with a new, I do believe, low productivity and reactivation oil well program, where, like I said, the company I work for, Mantle Artificial Lift, we provide pumping systems, we get her out of the ground, and at $70 a barrel, companies were utilizing that, right? They were, and things were going well, and again, just oil dropped down to that $60, and like I said, the 60's the new $20, and so you can have as many programs as you wish out there, and without the price of oil, they're all kind of just talk, right? But the abandonment program at the time, I mean, that was welcome and put people to work. There's no doubt about it, and cleaned up a bunch of old oil wells out there. So something like that, again, that was, like I said, that was totally welcome by all the service providers. Kind of put everybody to work. It touched everybody. So it was a really good thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to go to another ad here, folks, and we'll be right back. For your well servicing needs in Southeast Saskatchewan and Southwest Manitoba, you need the General. That's General Well Servicing of Cardiff, Saskatchewan. They've got a fleet of double, triple rigs, pressure vessels, and lighting rentals ready to serve you. They can perform rig assist and frac assist operations as well. Call Kevin at 306-482-3244. That's Call the General at 306-482-3244. Yes, sir. So I want to get back to a little bit to the coal thing here, because we keep getting depressing stuff about oil. I might have to pull out the bottle of scotch I don't have. so one of the things that's happening is that the province is now talking about $900 million for coal refurbishments. A large portion of that will be spent in Estevan. They're working right now, apparently, on getting Unit 4 back up and running within weeks, just in time for January, because we're going to need it. I think it's supposed to be sometime in January, Unit 4 back online. And one of the things I do when I'm driving around is if I'm on the south end of a city, I'll actually, and I did this just the other day, I'll take a good look, and sometimes I'll pull up binoculars and see how many of the smokestacks actually have steam coming out of it. And it's not ash. That's one thing to be clear, is that clean coal was originally cleaning up all the soot and stuff. I mean, Tony, you grew up here. Explain how that generation of clean coal made a difference, please.
I remember as a young lad, you would wake up if the wind was going the wrong direction. You would wake up with soot or what have you on your vehicles, and honestly, that hasn't been around for a long time. Again, it's just steam you're seeing coming out of those stacks, and So again, when you hear the word dirty coal, it's been cleaned up quite a bit over. And then is that Shand? Shand is probably the worst because it has all kinds of steam. It makes a good photo for the news to call it dirty and all that sort of stuff.
So that's carbon capture. So that's almost all steam coming out because the carbon dioxide has been captured. And then that's Unit 6. And then you can see a little bit coming out of 3 and coming out of 5 as well here.
Yeah.
So
and that was probably on a minus 30 morning when that plant is just so important, right? So that's when you notice it the most, when the colder it gets and the more steam flows off of it. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, and again, like the air quality and all that sort of stuff, like I said, all that's all from the 70s and 80s, if you will, and it's been cleaned up over the past few years, right? So Shand, I do believe, was built in the early 90s, and it's probably one of the cleanest when you actually get into it. It self-contains. It uses a little bit of water from Rafferty, but there's everything about it is so clean, which again, you can't say clean and coal in the same sentence, and you get ostracized or what have you. But the reality is it keeps us safe in those minus, especially in February, but obviously winter. But you know what I mean. The summertime as well. Air conditioning and all that sort of stuff. There's one climate we can control, and that's in our houses, in our buildings, right? So
I used to hear these jokes about the body of water. Is it beside Boundary, and the fish and the stuff? And what is that? Is that some kind of urban myth about there being like extra large fish in that water or something? Clear that up. For us.
Didn't you gotta save the bass pin, Bronwyn? I feel bad.
Tell me about this fish thing.
So many more. It was
or
many.
The temperature of the water thing. Tell me about.
Yeah, many moons ago, and I know even growing up, we called it our hot tub. We went out there on Friday, Saturday evenings, and go for a swim. And there used to be steam coming off of the water. Like I said, it was our hot tub. But many years ago, there was a fish that was taken over, a catfish. It was nicknamed the bullhead. It was taking over the lake, and they introduced largemouth bass, what have you. And the largemouth bass originally comes from Florida.
Yeah.
So it likes its water hot. So it was able to thrive and take out the bullhead species in Boundary Dam due to the water temperature, right? So, and again, it's not as warm as it once was, but that's where we got into save the bass, if you will, because you talk about saving thousands of people's jobs, and you talk about that, nobody cares, but you put a bass on a pin and say save the bass, and it spawned the University of Regina to come down, and now they're looking at both lakes. Can the fish live without the heated water?
Really interesting. Have these become like freakishly large fish in there because of the temperature or anything weird like that? Or
yeah, and they average 3 to 4 pounds, which is large for their size. And it was during COVID, and it was funny. There was 2 fishermen there on YouTube. One was at our lake in Boundary, and the other was at Lake of the Woods in Ontario. And the guy that was at Boundary, he keeps pulling out 3, 4, 5 pound bigmouth bass. And the guy that was in the Lake of the Woods, he's like, okay, where are you? Like, the guy in Lake of the Woods was catching little 1-pounders, and again, this guy was just amazed from Lake of the Woods. He's like, "Whoa, Saskatchewan, you're in Estevan? What are you talking about?" Right? So I mean, it's that's the legend of the largemouth bass.
Do people eat these fish?
Yeah, they're very good to eat as well, right? So
wow.
Yeah, and again, it's the only lake in Western Canada, I do believe, where largemouth bass are thriving, alive, and well.
Huh.
So, folks, we can still have a few more minutes here. If you have any comments or questions for Tony here, I have to say was so happy to write that series of coal revival stories, and I still have one or two that I should probably get around to writing here. And it was just like such a change in this community. It's like unbelievable, the feeling on that. And I know I'm talking about it a lot, but it's had an impact. I mean, I've said before, but it's worth saying again. My neighbor across that fence drives a drag line. Neighbor 2 doors down, moved recently, but renting his house out. Coal miner the whole time I've been here. Neighbor 2 doors over that way. Used to work at power plant, and his neighbor works at the mine, and the wife works at Sass Power. Neighbor beside the mailbox retired from Sass Power. I mean, that's all within 50 yards of my front door. So
yeah, for sure. So yeah, and again, like we said, with the city itself, it was just a 180 where we were in retraction, planning for the worst, and now last year's budget kind of reflected it. This year's budget's going to where now we have to start building infrastructure. There was a list of things that needed to be done that wasn't getting done because wouldn't be needed, as if you will, right? So again, now we need, with the city can't build housing and all that stuff, but the city can provide opportunity for that, right? So we look after the boring stuff, sidewalks, water, sewer, and all that stuff. So it goes to the developers and the real estate agents to start getting stuff built. And even in this, so it hasn't come out yet, but I can kind of leak it a little bit. We're going to come out with an incentive. Basically, if you build a new house or what have you, again, this has to go through council to get voted on, but kind of letting it out of the bag here today where you get 3 years free taxes. So we just want to incentivize, because people there's still that cautious optimism out there to build anything where, again, we have 0 vacancy right now in rental. There's basically no houses to buy, so we need to start building. But the city itself, like I said, in our budget now, sidewalks, water, sewer, all the boring stuff that you don't get to see on top. That's our focus. Will be our focus over the next few years, and then hopefully once the coal starts after getting rebuilt, we can look at new arenas and field houses and all
That's
the fun
awesome.
stuff.
We got an exclusive. We got an exclusive of your. You scooped it. It's excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we scooped it. So
Estevan is such a beautiful.
Again, sorry, it hasn't went through budget yet, but.
I have a question. So two quick questions. One, and we can go in whatever order, but my first thing, just on the private component of this, this turnaround, right? So, and you're right, Brian. I mean, the CER thing, clean electricity regs, for example, that's an Alberta thing. But one of the things that has caused so much trouble over the last few years has been the uncertainty. And that would be another prime example, right? So, shelved here, but maybe not over here. And, it's just not been helpful. But in terms of the coal and the announcement by the province that, we've been talking about, what is the impact of that on the major private companies? And I believe, is it mainly primarily Weyerhaeuser? I mean, do they just kind of now, as opposed to, having been told the memo or, given the memo that it's being transitioned, now sort of pick up sticks from wherever corporate speaking and come back to Estevan and get things rolling again? Like, how has that worked from on the private company side of the actual, like, extracting of the coal and so on? Where does that leave private companies?
Well, it's probably changed a lot of strategic planning as well. And so that's where the Southeast Tech Hub comes in as well. So the nuclear training, which is coming, the nuclear supply chain, you hear that every time you turn on the news as well, Simpson, all that sort of stuff. So that's where the Tech Hub is doing its best to get it out there to our Weyerhaeusers, our private businesses. We've had a couple ICE conferences that that the tech hub calls them. It's kind of critical minerals and things to look at. Again, nuclear supply chain.
Mhm.
Private industry in Estevan hasn't caught on to that yet, but they're starting to, right? Their ears are starting to perk up. Again, if they're a total oilfield company, you know what I mean? If they're not getting on board now, they're probably, making a mistake, I would say. But again, that's just where the tech hub and just that news and everything will hopefully change plans of the future where we can, start again, everybody can start building their companies again instead of retracting, which is everybody's been in, right?
So there's actually a couple things on my list that we forgot to get to and I want to get to before the end of the hour here. One of which is that there's currently an intertie to the United States under construction, $600 and some million for that. And when you count, how much we're going to pay for it over the years, it's actually going to be over $1 billion when you look at the fees. So that's under construction right now, about 12 miles west of Estevan. I don't know if you've seen much impact on the community from that. And the other thing is the construction. They already did road work on it of a 100 megawatt solar facility just west of Boundary Reservoir. Can you talk about those two projects?
Yeah, and again, the only upside that I've heard so far, and there is upsides to both projects, don't get me wrong, but hotels are noticing already that they're starting to fill up again, and they're kind of asking what's going on, and that's where the intertie is coming in, the solar, and
that's what I'm showing right now here.
Even the windmill project, right, in coming up in Weyburn, like all those services are starting to come to town, staying in our hotels, right? So the hotels are starting to notice. And again, that's a big change for them as well. They've been struggling just as much as everybody the past 10 years, right? So, and again, that's where it's just your personal feelings have to get put aside when you're a municipal leader. If there's projects coming, if there's projects getting built out there, you know what I mean? You have to welcome them with open arms, and because again, it just affects everybody. Some projects when they're getting built may not have the employment after they're built, but I mean, it's just during that construction stage. Again, just brings that economic activity to town. And again, we'll take her all, right? So,
what was the name of the company that's doing the solar project again? They changed their name halfway through.
Yes, and it's Ocean Man First Nation is kind of the head of the project, but honestly, I can't remember. They did change the name of it, Sun to Solar now or something it's called, but that was the actual First Nation that changed the name of it. So, but the contractor doing it, and that's one thing to note too. In the past year, you know what I mean. You always hear, your relationship with First Nation. We're surrounded. We have 3 of them around us: Ocean Man, Pheasant Rump, and White Bear. We have contact with all the chiefs. Everybody's on board for the same thing: economic activity, whatever it is. They're on board. Training. They want to see the training in Estevan. They don't want to go to the big cities for the big trip for Regina and Saskatoon. They don't want to make the travel. They want to travel to Estevan for anything they can, right? So, and the Ocean Man that's looking after the solar project, he'll say, well, sometimes we're bored. We just drive into Timmy's and grab a coffee and drive back home. So that's what we like to hear, right? But that just brings them into the area. And again, we welcome them with open arms. And we've had the conversation with our First Nations that, again, it doesn't matter what the project is. Like, let's join forces, come together, and be united and attract whatever we can to the area.
One of the things that I remember hearing a lot about in government was the impact, particularly on energy towns, of boom and bust in terms of crime. And, so whether it was Weyburn or whether it was Lloyd or whether it was Swift or Estevan and all the communities around, I mean, obviously when things were good, it's good, but that has its own kind of dynamic. And, and similarly when things are not going so well, that creates its own dynamic. But they're really positioned, those centers, like boom and bust really means something in terms of some of the struggles and challenges which those communities also face in boom and bust. Any comment on that, Tony, in terms of impact that way that you've had to address and that what you've seen as mayor in that regard?
Yeah, and it just kind of goes hand in hand with working with your EPS Estevan Police Service, right? Anything they can do to help out, because whether you're a big city, a small city, the struggle out there is real with that. So, even that's where I will give the government props. They kind of, in the summertime, they came out with a new act that kind of, put basically, you get caught with drugs and you go to court and you're probably out the back door faster than you came in the front door. So, it changed, a few things changed that, gave the EPS more tools. I would say it's probably had an impact already where, like if it just changes the criminal side of drugs to the weapons charge instead of, so that's one thing I'll give the government props to. And then obviously, just last Friday, I was with the announcement, the introduction of the Compassionate Care Act, right? It's just it's one of those things where police can only do so much. And you just need more tools in the toolbox to alleviate, help, because everybody wants to be safe, right? Nobody wants to go downtown or anywhere you know what I mean, and be bothered or have a run-in with somebody that's not right. So it's kind of a boom and bust thing, but that's where the old police service, their budget keeps going up, which is all good because they keep our community safe, and they just like the firefighters, they're running into somewhere where everybody else is running the other way, right? So
Tony,
we rely on them heavily.
You mentioned going to a conference in Edmonton about CCS, but also you and I were hanging out together at that conference in Saskatchewan in early mid-October there, I guess October 20th, thereabouts. And it was the inaugural Canadian Nuclear Association West Conference. And, Westinghouse had a huge presence. Cameco had a huge presence. General Electric, not so much, even though they're supposed to be the ones building our first reactors here.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's probably your first nuclear conference. What were your thoughts about this?
Yeah, that was my first nuclear conference, and honestly, it wasn't on our radar screen to attend. Then we were talking with Sask Power, some of the people at Sask Power, and they're like, "Well, you have to be there." And honestly, being the city manager, we were kind of hemming and hawing about it. But then we get there, and again, it's all eyes are on Estevan, everything, and even at the conference, like, you go out and have a coffee somewhere. As soon as somebody found out you're from Estevan, it's just so many questions. But you do get to meet the Camecos, even the GE. You get to meet all those people that are going to be bringing this technology to your city, and it was an eye opener. And they're like, "Wow, are you guys kind of ready?" These SMRs, although they're small, they're going to add thousands of people during construction. Construction could take up to 10 years. So it's just a totally different animal. And then the other thing about the nuclear is kind of once it's built, it's going to be in your community for the next 100 years, right? So it's just a totally different animal, totally different. And again, it was just eye opening where there was lots of stuff that we weren't thinking about. That people that have been through these, been in the nuclear industry, it was, like I said, it was a sobering fact that there's a lot more coming than just that picture that you see that you're showing right there, right? So.
Well, this is the chosen SMR reactor, but I seem to think that there's a possibility instead of building small ones, we might build big ones like not necessarily cooling towers like that, but ones that look like this. And the fact that Cameco bought 49% of Westinghouse, and a week after that conference, Trump ordered 10 of these at $8 billion a crack, which is, actually, as it comes to reactors, pretty affordable. I wonder if instead of getting SMRs, the province of Saskatchewan might just decide, we might take another couple of years to do this, but we're going to build the big ones instead. And if they do, that would obviously be at Rafferty. You think there might be any possibility of that, or what? Did you get any impressions from the conference that could be the case?
Yeah, there was definitely an impression that that's the future as well, right? So again, it sounds like I would probably guess you're going to get 4 SMRs first. So we'll put 2 on Boundary, 2 on Rafferty, and then Elbow can have that 1,000 megawatt. So.
That's interesting. Just processing that.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're probably going to get 2 SMRs and then 2 big ones. That's my guess.
Yeah. So again, whether it's a 300 megawatt SMR or 1,000 megawatt, like, let's go, let's build it. We're ready.
just going back on the water thing again, Brian and Tony, you're maybe more expert at this than I, but if we're talking about the SMR model versus the larger model, how much water is needed in terms of placement of smaller versus bigger? How much water is necessary for each? Do either of you know?
I do not know the
Well,
answer to that.
I can speak a little bit to that. It's not
Yeah.
so much what it is that whenever you're looking at thermal plants like this, coal or electrical, you'll get into the stuff that's not meant for public, but more detailed stuff. They'll say this plant is rated for 315 megawatts E for electrical, but then it'll be 600 megawatts TH for thermal. So that's the thermal output. So this reactor, the SMR, or this is, they're calling it 300, but it's actually 315 megawatts. Whereas this one here is 1200 megawatts. So that would mean that it would be putting out 4 times the electrical, which means it also be putting out 4 times the thermal, roughly speaking. So you plant one of these suckers, that's the equivalent of 4 SMRs. And generally you don't build one, you build 2. So
do you need them to be, you need them to be on water though, right? But it doesn't matter.
Yes.
no one builds a reactor that's not touching water.
Right. And you need more water or a bigger body of water for a larger plant?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and it sounds like the nuclears are a closed cooling loop system where it's not actually, it's drawing water from the reservoir, but it's not returning it in a sense. It keeps using it, where the coal fired is drawing it from the reservoir. And then there's an actual just where it returns the water into the, we call it Estevan's waterfall. So it's, it actually returns it in. Yeah, Estevan's one and only waterfall is the return from Boundary Dam. But
you have huge, large, warm fish and waterfalls. I mean, what's not to love, right?
And that's the best fishing is around the water return. That's why my hair fell out at such a young age, I'm pretty sure. But
well, folks, I think we got to wrap it up here. Is there any closing thoughts, Brahman and Tony?
You go ahead, Tony. Anything you'd like to add or say?
No, and again, like I said, there's so many things. We got the coal rebuild, SMR, solar facility, lithium, coal-to-graphite, geothermal project we didn't even touch on, Deep's geothermal project, the PTRC, Petroleum Institute there. They're doing so much. They're always in our, now we have RAN running max power hydrogen, which again, that seam of hydrogen runs right through southeast Saskatchewan. So we got the mad scientists from George Washington University. And again, every conference we go to, Estevan comes up in the conversation. Tech hubs out there getting the word out. Southeast College, again, it's just downtown's revitalized. Our market mall's revitalized. Come on down to Estevan. Build it.
I guess I should have touched more on the lithium thing because I'm the guy who's writing so much about it. But I hope that Tony, in a couple of years' time, we'll be able to have a more in-depth discussion about the impact of lithium, because I mean, they're starting commercial construction out at Torquay right now, which is 25 miles west of Estevan. And you know, all this stuff, just like the oil stuff, very much centers on Estevan there and at Stoughton. So hopefully we can talk about that in the future.
Yeah, and that's where another thing that I follow, the lithium supply within the next year or two, that's where the brine lithium is going to come into play because of a shortage of lithium in the world. So that's what we want to hear, shortage of lithium and graphite. Let's go.
Well, maybe we'll catch you before Christmas next year and we'll see how that's going.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you, folks. Have a good day.
Thank you.